Morning, everybody. Out of all the turbulence that we've been experiencing over the last few months here, opportunity, reassessment of goals is something that comes to the fore. As I've been working with my friend and colleague, Dr. Jo North, who's in the green room at the moment, making herself comfortable, she'll be brought on in a few moments here, we got our minds together and talking about the idea of lean and agile. Now, lean and agile are concepts you've probably come across in your personal life. Maybe you've heard them in your business life as well. But we're looking at that in the context of business planning. What are we talking about? Well, first of all, let me bring on Jo, and then we're going to share some thoughts with you, have a conversation over the next 30 minutes. If you've got any questions, by all means, pop them into the comments box. If you've got any follow-ups here, then by all means, fire away on that. But without further ado, let me bring in my friend and colleague, Jo, who's been waiting patiently. And there she comes. Good morning to you, Jo. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Thank you, Mahmood. It's good to see you. Thank you for having me back.
No problem at all. How's your week gone?
It's been really busy and really good, really productive. And it really feels as well like everything's opening up and starting to get some, some vibrancy out there again, which is great.
Very much so. So it's like that hibernation period is slowly, it's like winter is now finishing and we're coming into the spring time.
Yeah.
That's why the season's go. Listen, I introduced, for those who don't know you, and obviously shame on them, for those who don't actually know you, just give our listeners and viewers a bit of a flavour about your background and the space that you occupy.
Yeah, sure. So I'm an innovation and growth expert, and I've been working with businesses for the last 30 years, believe it or not. I know you probably think I'm far too young for that.
I thought you were a teenager if you go back in that joke.
But seriously, I've worked in all sorts of industries, in companies all around the world, from big to small, to help them innovate and grow. And that's what I do every single day. And I'm really passionate about that. I think it's really great to see how creative people have been actually over the last few months, thinking about what they want to do going forward with their businesses, repositioning the businesses, and actually re-establishing some goals that really work for them going forward.
That's an interesting point. So would you say it's not necessarily been a doom-laden last few months? I know it's impacted on businesses in a number of different ways. So do you detect some degree of optimism, some reassessment of goals?
Yeah, I think in the main, people are really, really pleased to get back to work, to, open the doors to business more fully. I think there's been some fantastic innovation and creativity where businesses have rethought how they do business and actually accelerated some of that innovation that was, lying under the surface. But for instance, there's all the restaurants and things that have gone online and done delivery services through to engineering companies that have manufactured something else, So we've been very creative in the main. And I think that's really caused us to stop and reflect about the future, what's important, and what we want going forward as we move out of this. I think there's a sense of reimagining the future, not just going back to the way things were, but using it as an opportunity to build on stuff that that was there before and make it even better than it was before.
And I think I like the couple of words that you're using there. So even though it's been a bit turbulent, even though things have not, nobody's anticipated what's ahead, there's opportunity in there. Some people have grabbed that in terms of actually moving forward with it. Now, when we got together in terms of me and you have been discussing and helping businesses over the last few months and few years, we've talked about, growth, we've talked about pivoting, and we've introduced the concept of lean and agile came to that conversation here. Now, I've got a view on what that lean and agile, I'll be interested in your thoughts about lean and agile, and then we can talk about them, how they apply to the whole concept of business planning.
Yeah, sure. It's fascinating, actually, and I won't talk in too much depth about it because I could go on about it. But lean really started, as you know, in the Japanese automotive industry, and it's about making small changes that incrementally add up to a big change. That's where it originated in companies like Toyota to gain market share, to look at how you can make everything streamlined, efficient, consistent as possible within the business. And that lean concept, although it started in manufacturing, is relevant to all businesses, and since that time has rolled out across the world really, and is still used very much today. And being agile is also about being flexible and really seeing what's, where the curve is heading. It's about being on the curve, hopefully slightly ahead of the curve, so that you can make those changes to your business as the situation emerges, as the world around us changes. So putting those two things together, being really streamlined, being really smart, and being super adaptive to what's going on in the world around us is a really important combination for businesses, especially with what's going on today.
I mean, I think that whole idea of lean, I think you used some examples there about how something is born out of industry. So I think if I remember correctly, David Brailsford, who was head of UK cycling, they used that whole concept of lean approaches, even to things like the amount of grease that was in the vehicles that were transporting the bikes, and they were looking for those very small wins. Is that the sort of thing that you're referring to when you talk about lean?
Absolutely. So that all applies. So David Brailsford, his phrase is marginal gains. So it's about the small things all adding up to make a big difference. So it's very closely related to that. And of course, people like James Clear, who write on things like subjects like atomic habits, where the small changes compound, and over time they become an even bigger change. So it's about being lean, but also being responsive as well, and flexible. We've talked, haven't we, before here, about how important it is to have an overall direction, a vision for where you want to go moving forward. And at the same time, it's important to have flexibility on the way.
So within that, Joe, do you think that, that they've come from, we've got different sectors that are being applied. So lean, I think, predominantly arose from the manufacturing sector, as you referred to. Agile is something probably that most of us are familiar with in terms of software development creatives here. So if some of the listeners are thinking, okay, well, our business may not be of the magnitude of a Toyota, we may not be British Cycling, so our business is, in comparison, quite small, quite modest. Do you think those principles can be adapted and applied to an SME, a solopreneur? Definitely.
And I think they're just as important, if not even more important, because when you're working on your own, or when you might be in a micro business with a really small team, everything you do counts. And it's really important to make sure that you spend the time doing the things that matter, the things that move the business forward, instead of doing processes that take too long, or aren't getting you to where you need to be, that just really aren't efficient and streamlined. And it's important to look up and outwards as well as inwards, and see what's going on in the world out there, and be prepared to shift and change and really move with the flow. I think it's super important for small businesses, and it definitely is really relevant. And actually, it's a lot easier to implement.
Yeah,
you can put your arms around it, and you can make a significant difference from some small changes, which is great.
So in that respect then, Joe, if we sort of took that whole ethos, that whole concept, something that's actually showing very positive results for businesses and for individuals, and we moved it into the world of business planning. Now, when I mention business plans to people, most of them have a perception, an old-fashioned perception, probably still current, that actually says, oh my God, we've got to go through this process, we've got to produce a document, and it can be quite a tedious, laborious process, critical. So in the context of planning, do you think that has application to the world of business planning and actually putting a route map together?
I think it's a must. I think you're right, Mahmood. So many people associate business plans with going to the bank and asking for money, or getting investment, or and at that point, they don't really see the benefit of having such an investment document to help them guide through their business. But that's what a business plan is. It's a living document. It helps you measure how you're getting along versus where you want to be, and it helps you make decisions. And it's really important that this business plan isn't something that's just a document that you wrote once and it's stuck on some drive somewhere on your computer. But actually, you're regularly getting it out, you're assessing progress, you're changing things, because and you're being really flexible.
I like that idea there, because I like the idea that you've introduced there about a living document. So it's not a document in its own right, and I suppose it involves a process, but it's a living, breathing, and life changes, the future changes, and the document needs to reflect that. So on that basis then, Joe, so let's say we've got a business that's thinking about pivoting. They might be thinking about going into a new market, they've got a new product line they want to introduce, their business might be taking a different direction. different group of customers, or perhaps a business that's saying, do you know what, I'm happy with what I'm doing, but I just want to make sure I'm doing it better. What's the start point, would you suggest, in terms of the lean and agile approach?
I think it's still about having a direction and a vision for what you want to actually achieve, and being really clear about where that end point is. Now, over time, you might change your view on that end point as you learn things, as the situation develops and as the background has evolved. So that's okay as well. And I think that's really, really important. But because at least if you've got a vision, then you can set up your business plan to take you in that direction, and you'll get further. You'll do better. You'll get there more effectively and efficiency. There's lots of research that supports this. If you've got that overall direction, then just if you make it up as you go along and you try to sort of bungle it together as you move forward, it means that you can then work back from your vision and say, what do I need to put in place to get there, but in a really lean, efficient, streamlined and agile way, so that you can flex it. It's a tool, it really is. It's like, I suppose it's like a sat nav for your business. You might, set your sat nav for Birmingham, and you set off, and then there are roadworks, so you get diverted round, and you end up roundabout where you wanted to be in Birmingham at the end of it, but you might have to change things on the way, and it's no different. So it's a really good tool, and it doesn't have to be this big tome of stuff and analysis and all of that. It really, really doesn't.
So we're not talking about writing War and Peace. Just as a small intervention, for those of you listening on the replay, if you type in #replay, as we said before, comments and shares appreciated. So I've got the wonderful Dr. Joe North here, who we're talking about agile and lean when it comes to business planning. Obviously, it's a concept that applies all over. Joe, as we come back here, so we've got really two time frames here, haven't we? We've got what we are now as businesses, and that's unique to ourselves. So we're not talking about emulating and replicating somebody else. It's your own internal vision, external vision, and the destination. And it's the gap in the middle, how we get there, that we're really talking about when we talk about planning. Would that be a fair summation?
Yeah, I think it's quite right that we each have our own definition of success and our own vision for what our individual endpoint looks like for our businesses. That's really, very right, and as it should be.
Absolutely.
And, from working with lots and lots of businesses over the years, it's the how do we get there where businesses get stuck. What is it important that we focus on? What are the skills gaps, and how can fix those or learn about those? So really getting that clarity of the way forward means that the businesses can then just get on and do it, and they feel really good about that, and they feel really confident because it's been thought through. They know what the priorities are, and they know what the actions are to get them from where they are now to where they want to be.
And in terms of that, I'm a big fan of planning. I like it as a concept, as a mindset. Doesn't mean it's always going to be correct. And I know you're a big believer as well. If you've got people, businesses who aren't quite convinced, whether they're charities, whether they're private businesses, SMEs, whatever shape they are, what would you put forward as a sort of, it's important to do planning because, sort of fill in the gap? What would you say?
It's important to do planning because it will get you from where you are now to where you want to be, even faster, even better, and actually even more sustainably. It will help with your decision making because you'll have a frame of reference around, should we do this or not? Well, does it take us in that direction? Does it fit with what we're trying to achieve here? And it also gives you confidence and peace of mind. It takes away a lot of the excess time we spend thinking and doing things that actually don't really help us on that journey. So it's essential. It's essential to plan, and it's essential to plan flexibly and in an agile way.
Perfect. I like that, because I think also, apart from the accountability it gives you as well, if I pick up on your driving analogy, is that if you've actually planned your route to some extent before you set off, which is what your business planners do, you're not going to be wasting time going down B roads, A roads, diversions. You've got some idea how to get to that path. So that investment of time and energy at the beginning is going to reap so many rewards for you later on. Definitely. And, you've got to know that you at least want to go somewhere near Birmingham,
or that you want to go to the seaside or whatever it is, you've got to have that, otherwise we don't just get in our cars very often and go, and just set off doing. So knowing what that general direction is really important.
We'll point out to everybody, but other cities can count, by the way. Joey's from York, so, it's not just Birmingham, but there are many other cities in the UK and around the world. So if you're in Birmingham anyway, hi there. If you're in another city, it applies to you as well.
Yeah, I'm actually in North Yorkshire, so I have no idea why it's mine this morning.
But you could have picked out Ripon, you could have picked out anywhere, so purely random. In terms of, can you see a situation, I'm scratching my brains, I can't really think of one, a situation where actually business planning is not going to be a positive thing for a business?
It's very hard to think of a case where a business plan can't help. A business plan can help you accelerate your growth if you're already growing. I think, one of the worst things a business can be is complacent and think they've got it all nailed and there's nothing to learn, there's nothing to change, because it's all, that complacency is preliminary to not a great outcome over time, actually. So even if businesses are growing well, a business plan can help them maintain that growth, make sure it's still there and still relevant, and actually accelerate it. And if a business is right at the other end of the spectrum, if a business is finding it really challenging and tough out there right now, and many businesses are, then a business plan can help you work out, well, where is it best that you spend the time? How can you get out of this as quickly as possible and turn things round in a way that's really sustainable as well for the future?
Perfect. I mean, I like the idea that you introduced about complacency. Typically in planning, from my perspective, I think here is when you're putting a plan together, there's got to be an element of what if things don't go quite as I expect them to. Now, you can't always foresee, major catastrophes, pandemics, and whatever, but actually have flexibility that says, if things don't go quite well, do I have a follow-up plan there as well? And I'm not sure what your thoughts are, but I certainly think that over the last few months, when there's a crisis to cope with, whether it's a recession, whether it's pandemics, not all businesses are geared up for when things go a little bit wrong.
No, and hopefully we've all of us have learned an incredible amount from recent months. And when I create a business plan or work with someone for my own business, or when I work with clients to create theirs, I think it's really important to have a number of scenarios. I'd go for 3. What's the best case, the realistic case, and the worst case? How can we create some contingency in case things do change, and plan from that perspective? And actually, when you look at the forecasting that organisations like the Bank of England does, or the CBI and others, they'll put in a range of different scenarios as well. So it's not about having one plan and that's the plan. It's about actually creating some a range, a bandwidth of options, and so that you can flex up and down as is required. And that's what being flexible and agile is all about.
I do love your phraseology, that bandwidth. Before we carry on, Joe, I'm just going to have a slight intervention here in the sense of we've just got a couple of comments here. I'm just going to share with you. So we've got Richard from World Max. Let's just put his comment on the screen. So we've learned to plan. Well, everyone can read, so my apologies. It's like being in a theatre sometimes or a presentation when somebody reads the slide. It probably doesn't add much, but everyone's got there before I have. That's a great comment here. So I think in terms of what we were talking about, in terms of the lean and agile, that's probably a great illustration of looking at a process, taking out the non-value added aspects here, and that's going to liberate time and create energy. So that's a great example there. What's your thoughts on what we just saw there?
Thank you for the comment, Richard. It's a really good comment, actually. And when you're thinking about scaling up, it's really important that you have those lean, efficient processes in place, because when businesses try to build on processes that aren't efficient and don't work very well, all that does is actually multiplies the problem, and it becomes more apparent as the business gets bigger. So you're so right to think about actually what are the fundamental processes that we've got, how can we make those lean and efficient so that we can spend time and money on other things, and we know that our core processes really work for us and create the customer experience that we want as well.
I'm going to paraphrase here, so my apologies if I haven't quoted exactly. It makes me think about a phrase I think Bill Gates said once upon a time about you can have really efficient technology, but if you overlay that on inefficient processes, you just magnify the inefficiency.
Yeah, and especially when you're trying to grow. And I've seen this so many times when businesses, they've created demand, they've got a fantastic product or services, but they haven't invested the time putting, their processes together that sit underneath it. And that really stops and slows down the growth and gets in the way. And they have to go back in and do that. Whereas, and this is what I was saying, we're talking about business planning and processes for small businesses, for solopreneurs, micro businesses, that actually now's the time to start that. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you, then get that going so that when you're ready to grow, you can just expand out and you can do it so much faster and better.
Absolutely, and I think in terms of, there's actually a financial business case for doing that, because time that you liberate, time that you save has got a definitely financial positivity, which means more money left behind, and it's more money. And I think one of the reasons I love working with you, Joe, and certainly on this project that we're doing together, is we're both also business minded. So whatever your business actually is, money has got to feature as part of that end objective.
It definitely has, and we definitely have got the same values and perspective on that. In that we're here to create organisations and grow organisations that have purpose, that have great products and services, and so on. And it's about making money, and that could be for a community interest company or a not-for-profit social enterprise just as much, because the more efficient that the organisation is with its resources, the more good it can do.
Absolutely.
That's so important. And I think as well, processes mean that the customer has a great customer experience consistently. And that's really important, that we know that the processes we've got in place keep the business that we've worked so hard to win.
And it's interesting you say that. I mean, from what I've read, I know you're a big expert in this area, is that from my understanding about lean and agile, whatever you apply that to, and here we're talking about business planning, is they're actually both customer driven. So actually it's putting the needs of the customer first, as opposed to putting ourselves first and saying, this is what we do, the customer's going to like it. Would that be a fair reflection?
It is fair. It's a very fair reflection. It's a really good point that when a business is truly customer focused, really understands where the customer's coming from and what the customer problem is that the business is solving, because we're all in business to solve the customer's problem, whatever that might be, then the rest follows, as long as we do it in a really lean, efficient and agile way.
So do you have a feeling then? So I mean, obviously, we're big believers in there. We've got lots of people we've worked with that are actually big believers in the business planning and doing that, why it's really essential, apart from being great at what they do. What do you think the reasons are why lots more businesses don't necessarily engage with the idea?
When I've asked businesses about this, there are two principal reasons. The first one is maybe 3, 2 to 3. The first one is time. They say they don't have time because they're so busy in the day job that they're not stepping back and thinking about where the business is going. They're not spending time on the business, and so in the business. And I think sometimes that's true. And I think also sometimes it masks the real reasons why they're not creating a plan, because times are, easy thing to say, isn't it? We can hide behind time.
Sure.
The other reason is because I think, especially in times like today, people have this notion, or some people, not everybody, have this notion that, well, there's no point creating a plan because we don't know what's going to happen in the future and everything's going to change anyway. And what I'd say to that is you're adding to the chaos by not having a plan. Because, what we do know is that things are going to be uncertain. We do know that we're not going to know. So how are you going to manage not knowing? How are you going to take your business through that time of uncertainty and not knowing? You need a plan for that. That's really, really important to start.
And I would imagine that if any reason, because of that reason, that should be a good reason in itself to do something.
Yeah, and to build the resilience, the sustainability, and and the health of the business throughout all of that. I think as well, another reason is because people think it's this, dusty, traditional, heavy document that doesn't really add much value, and it's not that. Your business plan can be, you can have a plan on a page, maybe 2 or 3, to support it. really high level, but it's a navigation tool, and it's a toolkit for you to help you get to where you want to get to. So I think, not really appreciating what a good working business plan is in today's living businesses.
Absolutely. And I think as well that I think it's critical to get what's in here, to marshal it, to organize it, to think, okay, that's how we're going to do it. You need to document it somehow, because I think your brain and your mind can play tricks on you. Your brain will fill in the gaps if you don't actually get it out there and actually write it down, whether it's, handwriting or whatever. But if you don't have a document of some description, and as you quite rightly said, whether it's 2 or 3 pages, or if you want to do a 55-page tome, it's got to be there, and it's got to be in, a visual format. You can't just leave it in there, because your brain will just basically fill in the gaps, which could be quite destructive.
Definitely. It gives you the thing about putting things down on paper that actually clears the mind. And also it gives you more ideas about how to get there, and to be able to step back and see what's in your head from the perspective of what you've put down on the page is really very illuminating. It's good for mental health as well, because it means you're not carrying this stuff around. Also, it's not a good use of your brain to keep everything in there, because you need your brain for, solving problems, having ideas and moving things forward, not for having the same stuff going round and round. The other reason the business plan is a really cracking tool is because it helps you communicate your thinking with others. You can get others' ideas if you're working with a team, or maybe you've got some people that you outsource to on a virtual basis. So you can share your ideas and you can add into those. And what I love looking at things that I wrote back in, 2000, 2010, for for all sorts of plans, to look back and see where you've come from, where you started, what you wanted, and what you've achieved since then. That's a really nice thing as well.
It is a lovely thing, actually. And I think you've got to be, the whole thing about lean and agile as well, is very much, it lends itself to a learning environment. And I think it's fair to say that we're not saying do a business plan and that's it, guarantees you're going to get there. It's living, as you said, it's breathing, it changes, it adapts. If you've got an idea of the route you're going to take, it will adapt within that. It'll also help you avoid the shiny bauble syndrome, where you might get distracted by a new piece of technology or something else. But, in my own business life, I've done things which I've messed up on. I've made, things gone wrong. But it's nice to look back and you learn from those experiences. You put them right, as long as you don't keep repeating them. So would it be fair to say it doesn't mean you can't make mistakes along that journey? Things might go a little bit wobbly. Yeah,
and I think, people sometimes have a resistance to setting KPIs or targets in case they don't achieve them. And that really, I wonder why that is, because actually you've set them for yourself, and they're there as a guide of something you'd like to achieve. And if you do achieve them and surpass them, then there's a great thing to ask yourself there, which is why, what works so well? What can I repeat? What can I keep doing to get those cracking results? And also, if you fall short of what you would have liked to have achieved for whatever reason, you can say, okay, so what do I need to do differently going forward? And it's not about mistakes, it's not about failure, it's about guidance and learning, and being able to adjust your actions to get the outcome that you want, that you've said you want to go for. And this is actually a fun process as well. When you've got a great business plan, when you're excited about what you want to do, why you want to do it, and you really want to get there, then the journey can be an absolute blast. It will have its ups and its downs, but it's a really enjoyable thing. It's a very fulfilling thing, actually, as well.
I love your point as well, by the way, about the well-being aspect. So yes, obviously we want businesses to do well, make money, have impact, but actually also it's a very good thing in terms of the mental well-being, because as you said, if you free up that space in your brain, it's like tidying up your desk here, and you empty it and you've got a plan, you've got a direction here. It also means that when you do KPIs, as we said, and you set mini milestones, it's amazing. A lot of us think we don't achieve a great deal because we think we haven't got to our end point. But actually, if you look at your milestones, if you look at what you're measuring, you think, actually, do you know what? I've not done too badly. I can tick it off. I'm making progress along that journey. And it relieves the anxiety, I find, especially because we're very hard on ourselves sometimes.
It does, and it also means we can switch off a little bit. You know, when we relax, we can relax properly because we know we've got a plan, we know we're working to it, we know how it's all going. And I think that's a really big thing as well. And I think we've all learned a lot about that actually during recent months, is that as well as working really hard, it's important to step back and take some time out.
So, Joe, listen, in terms of just some takeaways for people. So, for those people who are uncertain about the whole idea, what is there a particular tip that you would say to them, apart from obviously joining a business growth club like we're doing here? What should they do as their first step to go on that route to their putting their business plan together?
I think they should really think about this as an enjoyable process, and maybe throw all those old ideas about it being stuffy and, you know, this big document out of the way. You can create a business plan by just putting aside a little bit of time every week. So we're doing this, you know, it's over 10 weeks, 10 steps, and you'll get a really good business plan that you'll feel confident, proud of, and excited about at the end of it. And it's about making a start and having a go and working with people. Whether it's Mahmood and I, you know, we'd love to work with you, but finding someone to work with who can help you, keep you accountable, support you, be a cheerleader for you, and also give you some expert input and new thinking and new ideas on the way. And that's what we're going to be doing with the members of our new Business Growth Club.
Perfect. I mean, I love working with you, Joe, because I love your enthusiasm, I love your knowledge base, I love your skills, I love your adaptability, and I love your sort of business experience and knowledge. So it's been great working with you so far, all together. So here's a question for you.
It's definitely mutual. I really enjoy working with you as well. It's just brilliant. Really enjoying it.
And so in terms of if somebody decided to do it as a DIY exercise, would you still suggest them that they need to perhaps have another party to bounce ideas off, or to look at the plan, to feedback on there? I mean, would you recommend doing a business plan in isolation without any input from anybody else?
I think you can certainly start on your own. Excuse me. You can start on your own and get your initial ideas out. But as it starts to take shape, it really is invaluable to have somebody to ask you questions about it, even if they're not challenging questions. Just, you know, to talk out loud, explore further, and give you some challenge and some fresh thinking as well, because that will just really enrich what you're doing. So if you are doing it on your own, if you do fly solo on it, get some input from people whose opinions you trust and value. I wouldn't ask anybody or everybody.
Absolutely.
People whose opinion, you know, you really value.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's a great way of rounding up. So listen, Joe, that's been brilliant. Thank you very much for your time as always. So hope the rest of the day goes well. I'm looking forward to catching up with you, and I think we've got about a week to go, isn't it, before day one?
Not long now, only a few places left, so it's filling up, which is fantastic. I'm really excited. Thanks for having me on again today, Mahmood.
And I would say to everybody, by the way, what we're sharing today is stuff that we've gone through ourselves, experiences here, and we're actually doing it ourselves. And when we put this whole concept together, you know, we are actually going through that same processes in terms of end destination, in terms of start point. So this is not an academic piece of work. So even though Joe has got a strong academic background, even though I've got a strong academic background, we live in the real world here, and it's practical, lean and agile. So Joe, once again, thank you very much for your time today. Richard, thank you very much for coming here. Anyone who's listening here, #replay, any comments, everyone have a fantastic day. Joe, talk to you in a minute.
Thanks.
Cheers. Let's play out some music.